Today, I want to talk a little bit about some of the model strictness checks that Laravel Eloquent provides. If we look at the code here in my app service provider, I'm using this should be strict mode. And what this does is it sort of wraps around three different strictness checks that Eloquent offers. So if I drill into this, it prevents lazy loading. It prevents silently discarding attributes. That's not good. Losing data is very easy that way. And then it throws an alert if you try to access an attribute that does not exist. So those three things combined cover a lot of potential quiet bugs that can happen. Some are performance, some relate to data loss or logic errors. Today I want to focus on this one about lazy loading. And so just to demonstrate what this is, before I talk about the gotcha to be aware of, I just want to set up a very simple example. So in this route, I'm fetching all of the users, and our users have a posts relationship that has many posts, potentially zero, potentially more than one. And I'm just adding on a property to this user object in my controller called latest post date. And it's using that relationship, getting the newest one. And if there is a newest one, it gets its created at date. And then it passes all that data on down to the view. So if I try to load this right now with lazy loading protection enabled, I get this error as I would expect, and it nicely points out I tried to lazy load the posts relationship on the user model, but I had the protection enabled, so it prevented me from doing that. The solution to this is quite simple. I can eager load. So users load posts. If I save that, refresh, it works. And in fact, I enabled Laravel debug bar just to show I'm only running 3 queries. That's great, right? So that's about as clean as we can get. Problem solved. That's exactly what the strictness check is trying to help us do. However, what I want to point out today is lazy loading protection doesn't protect you from all similarly shaped performance problems. Sometimes you'll hear this called an N+1 problem, where you're trying to fetch one result and then loop over related results, and actually it's doing an extra query for every single result that you're fetching. That's not good from a performance perspective. You can still have those issues even with lazy loading protection enabled. So let me show an example and kind of talk through it. If I take this fix, and let's say, for whatever reason, I do this here. Now, this is clearly a mistake, right? I'm eager loading my entire users collection, but I'm doing it every single time I loop over my user. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But I just want to point this out. If I come back here and I refresh this, it still works, right? My data's still loaded. Everything looks good. It even kind of felt fast. But again, this is a very toy example. But look down here. I now have 22 queries, and debug bar is pointing out 20 of them are duplicates. So I have a problem. This isn't exactly an N+1 problem, but it is definitely a problem involving unnecessary database requests being done inside of a loop. So this might seem like, well, why would you ever do that, right? Clearly you would not do this in this simple of an example. You should have your hand slapped if you do this. Like, it's clearly a bug, it's a mistake, even though it works. But if this were a less trivial example, right? It's more complex. There's multiple models involved, maybe multiple relationships. There's some logic as to when I eager load and when I don't, when I loop, when I don't. You can lose sight of this. So my only point that I want to share with you today is just don't let your guard down. Even if you have those strictness checks enabled, don't relax that part of your brain that's thinking about database performance issues, especially when dealing with loops of records. You still can have bugs that slip through, and it's not Laravel's fault. You could have a backup tool, like I use Sentry for performance monitoring and exception handling. It will throw alerts silently when you run duplicate queries like this. So maybe have that as a nice backup example in addition to the strictness checks and in addition to being diligent about this as a developer when you're writing code.